Hey there everybody, Eric from Outer Limitless coming at you today with another video. Now in the past we've looked at some products from the company Wuben. Most specifically, we looked at this E61 Gecko, which is a cool multi-function pen. And at this point, Wuben is coming out with the next model in this particular lineup, this here, the E62. Now the really cool thing about this is, well, usually as a gear reviewer, I kind of come in the process after the product has been fully developed, come to production, and then released. In this case today, well, I finally get the opportunity to get a little bit of critical feedback to the Wuben team, to the Wuben engineers, before they go to final production. So this here is still in the, call it the prototype phase. So here, the E62, what we're going to do, we're going to go through this in a little bit of detail, compare it against the E61, see kind of how these compare and contrast, where they differ just a little bit, and how this E62 might be an option for somebody. Look at the features, look at the overall layout, and then get some critical feedback to the people at Wuben. And well, you can definitely help in this process if there's anything here that you see, and really weigh in on kind of some of my thought process, just to maybe reaffirm what I'm thinking, or maybe contrast it just a bit depending on your thoughts and experience. Well, that feedback will go back to the people at Wuben to make some changes for the final production model. But with that said, I have a whole bunch to do and a whole bunch to share with you, and if you're interested in seeing a little bit more about what I'm about to get into, do me a favor, stay tuned. Now before we get too far, I would like to say thank you very much to the people at Wuben who did provide this for review. And so again, here, this is the E61. This is the Gecko model. So the Gecko model having a number of different features here, really being a multi-purpose, everyday carry style pen. Has some writing utensils, has a light on it, and a couple of different things that make this fairly useful if you're looking for a multi-purpose item. But then here, the E62, well, taking a very similar sort of direction, again, going to be a multi-function pen. Is this called the Gecko? Well, at this point, it doesn't necessarily say. So I'm not 100% sure if this is going to be the Gecko lineup or if this is going to get a unique name, but nonetheless, this is the E62, so the next model in the line. Now, as we go through all the features here, again, here the original E61. Now, I'm not going to go into complete detail, but I think it's important enough to go through this so that you can see how it compares to the E62. And the first thing you'll see, very similar form factor. I mean, that's the first thing. Very pocketable. It's really sort of like a large size pen. I mean, when you really compare it against, your typical pen or a small marker, very similar, a little bit fatter, of course, but at the same time, not too far off, which is nice because it does make this very pocketable. So that's certainly the case both for the E61 and the E62. Now, the first thing that I greatly like about the E62, I do prefer this clip placement. On the E61, it's fine, but it's sort of on the side of the light, and it has to be, and I get that. But the placement here on the E62, I think just a little bit better, where then sort of the like thinner profile is really what's, sticking in your pocket, and then the wider profile kind of taking up the width. These clips do work fairly well overall. I have no problem with them. I do like them, and you'll see here just this button here on the back side. So on your clip side, able to illuminate the light. So here, that brings me to the light. Single click here, and then a long press going between the modes. So that works out pretty well. And if you look at the difference between the light on the E62 versus the E61, well, the E61 was pretty much like a retractable type of model. So you'll see here, as I flip it out, you did have the ability to use it both collapsed and expanded. So the button here on the E61, you'll see, does end up on the back side of the light, and then single pressing here, and then long pressing between the modes. So if we go to the high mode, for example, I'm just going to illuminate both of these. So here, we'll kick that on. And again, long pressing. Now, both of these, very good. I don't know if you're going to be able to see the difference, but I do think that the E62, the light is sort of vastly improved Not a major difference, but just a nice even cast beam. Same with the E61, don't get me wrong, but I just think it's a little bit nicer, a little bit brighter, and just has a sort of more even and softer glow on the E62. So a little bit of an improvement there, which is definitely nice. Now you'll also notice on the E61, the micro USB charging port here on the light sort of gets covered up when you collapse this, which is cool. Here it ends up with a little bit of like a rubber grommet, which is okay, but I do find that I kind of accidentally pick this out if I'm not careful. So once it's flush and pushed in, no problem. But like if I was sloppy and didn't put it all the way back down, that's kind of always sort of flapping around. So you really need to take your time, just push it down nice and flush, and at that point, no problem. But again, both of these using micro USB. You've heard me talk about it in the past. I really do prefer at this point a USB Type-C. However, there are a lot of companies still sort of holding on to the micro USB. I'm not 100% sure why. It could be the size of the connector and just, you know, the way it fits inside a smaller package. But at the same time, to me, I would say the micro USB is okay, but the USB Type-C I would prefer. Now on the original E62, it had a multi-purpose pen. You'll notice here, if I flip this around, you do have a writing utensil. Now, that's the way I used this. On this side, this is sort of a glass breaker, but I did actually just keep it on that side so that the pen wouldn't write all over my stuff, and then when I need it, just flip around the pen. So that works out pretty well. This came with some refills, which is nice. But the E62 here, just a dedicated glass breaker. Now for me, how is that going to work out? I honestly can't really say. To me, a glass breaker is very much, I would not say everyday carry, rather situational carry. And for an EDC item like this E62, I would prefer something that's less situational and more everyday. I have yet in my life, in my 41 plus years, to need to break glass with a glass breaker. Is that something somebody might need? Yeah, maybe at some point, but I think I would do it another way. And if it got to that point, would I remember that my like EDC pen with my glass breakers in my pocket? I don't know. So to me, I'd rather this actually be, I would say, something more, I don't know, just literally everyday functional versus something that's situationally functional. I mean, I kind of get it. And I don't want both of these to literally become the identical same tool, but would there be something that on here would make it more everyday worthy than something that's more situational? I think probably yes. I would need to think about it a little bit, but at the same time, the glass breaker for me, definitely not ideal. But then moving on, well, the E61 had no cutting capability. None whatsoever. And the cool thing about the E62, well, they've now added that capability. So here, as you see, getting into this and unfolding this little blade. Well, this is an E11 style, so a number 11 style scalpel blade, which is definitely cool. The idea being that you can actually replace these blades. Now, as we look here, you'll see this has a blade pocket. So sitting down in here, this does fold down into this little pocket, where what I wonder is, could you potentially use a different like number 11 blade, or not different, I would say not necessarily number 11, but a different scalpel blade, and get it in here and get a little more usable blade length, because this is a little short in my opinion. And then at that, the blade shape is cool, but it's more of like a craft style or an actual like scalpel blade than having something with a little more blade length. So for me personally, I would probably be using this to break down cardboard boxes or open packages, and I'd love to have the blade extend from the tip all the way down basically to the hinge point, where at that point it would do a little bit better work. Now you saw I leaned on that, and this does immediately close. So if you're not careful, that will close pretty easily on you. So you definitely need to be a little bit careful, but that's not a big deal as long as you're paying attention and don't get your fingers down in this area. And at the same time, as I mentioned, I would love to have a little more blade length here from the tip all the way to the base. And that would work out extremely, extremely well if you were able to swap that out. So I could do a little more experimentation really to play with this. The other comment I have is, well, instead of the replaceable blade, what if you just had like a perfectly fitting, and I would say like, you know, complete blade all the way to the inside of the pocket, fitting nicely with a full length cutting edge from the tip all the way to the back, a little more stout. And that's the other thing. You'll notice that this is very thin. So maybe if you had a little bit more of a stout blade that was permanently built into this as a little folder, you could definitely sharpen it from time to time, no problem. I think personally, I would probably prefer this with a nice sort of permanently mounted folding blade, fixed to this unit, rather than having the replaceable scalpel blade. But that's just my opinion, and I'm curious to hear from all of you what you think. Now, just to wrap this up, the E61 also had a little magnetic capability, and that was nice for a couple of reasons. One, well, if you wanted to use the main light, you could definitely use this sort of like a mechanic's light and turning this on, or if you double press here, well, that goes to an emergency strobe, which is really awesome if you needed to leverage this maybe on the side of like the road or something, just to draw attention to your car if you broke down. Well, the E62 does also do that. So if I turn on the light, double press here, you'll notice, again, a nice strobe pattern. It definitely does that well, but no ability to mount this on a car or a toolbox or anything like that. So you really kind of do need, in my opinion, the ability to put that little magnet. So here you'll see that magnetic area on the backside of the E62. Now, if it was done right, you probably still could get away with having the clip on this side, or quite honestly, and it would be pretty easy, maybe just swap the clip around to this side, which would not be a big deal, and then have this side with the magnet and then your button. So hard to say the best thing to do there, but just an observation. I sort of wish this had the magnetic capability. But all in all, that pretty much covers the bulk of the comparison. Now, there are a couple other additional things that I covered about the E61. If you are interested, take a look back at one of my prior videos. But comparing the basic features against the E62. So here at this point, the prototype version of the Wuben Light E62. What do you guys think? Leave some comments below. And so, all right, guys, there you have it. A preliminary look at the E62. Now, is this the Gecko? I don't know, but bottom line is still in the prototype mode, which is cool. So now moving forward, I'm curious about everybody's thoughts. I mean, you heard what I had to say. I think some really good things going for this, but definitely some things that, in my opinion, could be a little bit tweaked. Are they overall detrimental to the usability? No, it's just my personal preference, what I think I would get out of a multi-function piece like this, and something that I want to carry every day. You know, that's the thing. Some of these things are a little bit situational. The glass breaker, would I really like go to that every day? No, but a different type of utensil, I would. Is it a writing utensil? Probably. I mean, would I prefer this to be a pen? That would be pretty much fantastic. And then the ability to really sort of magnetize this and stick it to something, I think was a great feature in the original E61 Gecko. I'd like to see that too on the E62, and not to make these identical. I think mixing it up is a good thing, and maybe they get paired together and become, you know, really a little more multi-use. But to me, I think just kind of differentiating from some of these things would help a little bit. The glass breaker, hit or miss in my mind. I mean, I'm not really going to need to go to a glass breaker every day or ever, for that matter. I mean, really ever. The light was great. The overall charging capability, sound, no problem. The clip I actually prefer on the E62, which is awesome. And then the little scalpel there, well, like I said, I'm going to need to do a little bit more experimenting to see how that works. Overall, pretty good. Would I prefer to see a sort of full-time, like, fixed knife and not a replaceable blade on this? Yeah, probably. I think I'd prefer just, sort of a fold out, fixed blade in here. And I don't mean like a fixed blade. I mean just not a replaceable blade. But overall, to the people at Wuben, definitely very nice. So all right, guys, thanks for stopping by. I hope you like what you saw. I hope you found it a little bit informative. If you like what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Take care now. I'll see you soon.